They used to whisper about you like you were a rumor. Now they speak your name like it's a warning. Let that sink in. Because you didn't just walk into the room, you changed the temperature of it. And now they're sweating, scrambling, gossiping, plotting, blaming the lighting, blaming the angles, blaming the mirror. But deep down, they know it's your look, not just the clothes, not just the glow. It's the way you walk now, the silence in your eyes, the storm in your presence. You've become a conversation they can't escape and a reflection they can't stand. You've always been a problem, but now you're a headline, and they hate that they don't get to control the narrative anymore. So why is the whole town talking? Why are the ones who used to ignore you suddenly obsessed? Why are powerful people panicking? Because your elevation didn't come with permission slips. You didn't ask to be seen. You didn't beg to be chosen. You became undeniable. And now that your name is flying through boardrooms, family chats, and private group texts, they're realizing something they never wanted to admit. Your rise was never random. It was written in your silence, your scars, and your refusal to break. And if you're feeling this message already, don't forget to pass it forward. Press that like button, subscribe, and help spread this message to more souls who need it. This isn't just content, it's a warning, it's a mirror, it's a movement, and it's our responsibility to make sure the right people hear it. Now listen carefully. The streets are buzzing. Your name has become a pulse in the room, a low frequency that makes the envious itch and the fake smile even harder. You are what they pretend not to notice, and exactly what they can't stop watching. It's not just what you wear, it's the power in your posture, the clarity in your silence. It's the way you walk in looking like a lesson and leave like a prophecy fulfilled. They thought they buried you under rumors. They thought they could make you the punchline. Now you've become the plot twist, and every person who sat at a table to laugh at your downfall is now choking on the news of your comeback. That's why it's going down. Not just online, not just in private, but in places where power used to hide, where truth used to get filtered, where your name used to be dismissed. Now it's the headline, the whisper, the wildfire. You're not just the talk of the town, you are the talk. You've shifted the weather, you've changed the forecast, you've made your presence felt in rooms you've never even entered. And what's beautiful, you did it without noise, no begging, no drama, just that cold, steady pressure of someone who knows who they are. And now, the universe is returning the favor. 300 names are being exposed. Quiet players are getting caught in loud consequences. Institutions are unraveling. Hidden hands are getting revealed. The same people who used to smile at you in public and sabotage you in private, they're losing sleep, losing control, losing everything they thought was protected. Because here's the truth, when you walk in your power, you don't have to say a word for the world to listen. Your energy speaks, your transformation screams, and right now it's screaming so loud it's echoing through entire communities. Your look has become a mirror, and everyone's forced to see what they really are. And let's not forget, someone important has been watching, a powerful admirer, silent, wealthy, respected. They've been observing how you moved through storms, how you never let your pain become your prison. They're stepping forward now, not because you need saving, but because they know you're rare, and they want to be part of what comes next. Let the haters run their mouths. Let them try to discredit your glow. But know this, you were built for this moment, and they were never prepared for the version of you that's emerging now. The version that doesn't flinch. The version that doesn't shrink. The version that walks into gossip like gasoline and leaves it burning. This is your time, your shift, your revenge, not through bitterness, but through brilliance. The universe is moving pieces behind your back, and all of it is working in your favor. So let them talk. Let them spiral. Let them wonder what you did. And you? Just smile, because you didn't do anything extra. You just finally stopped dimming your light. Before we go any deeper, if this already hit your chest like truth you've been waiting to hear, drop 777 in the comments right now. Let the whole town know you see it, you feel it, and you're not hiding anymore. And if this message is speaking your story out loud, show love to the team behind this transmission with a super thanks. It takes real grit, time, and protection to bring a message this raw into the light. And every gift, whether it's a cent or a stack, keeps this truth alive and moving. You're not just watching a video, you're witnessing the blueprint of your own rise being decoded in real time. And if you really are who you know you are, then you'll feel the pull to stay until the very last word. Because what we're about to break down isn't just facts. It's a full unraveling of the system that thought your look was a threat, and is now watching you become the very standard. So stay locked in, because this isn't random. It's going down, and they can't stop it. Let's get into it. Number 1, they didn't come for you by accident. They came because you were the threat they couldn't predict. You weren't a problem, you were a pattern breaker, and patterns hate anything that doesn't kneel. Let that sink in. The way they moved against you wasn't random, it wasn't bad luck, it wasn't just life. It was strategy, quiet, ruthless, premeditated, and most of all, personal. Because the truth is, they saw it in you before you saw it in yourself. The way you carried energy that didn't match their system. The way your presence made lies feel uncomfortable. The way your silence exposed what their masks were trying to hide. That's why it started early. That's why it followed you. That's why it kept changing faces, but the feeling was always the same. You walked into places, and the room shifted. Not because of what you said, but because of what you couldn't be controlled into doing. The neighbor who gave you that fake smile, the teacher who seemed just a little too invested in your child's discipline, the manager who never said it directly but made sure you felt it, the way the atmosphere would darken the moment you walked in. That wasn't coincidence. That was code red. That was the alarm system of the status quo panicking because someone had just walked in who wasn't programmed to fold. And some of you still wonder, why me? Let me give it to you straight, because your very existence is a glitch in their matrix. You weren't built to obey dysfunction. You weren't trained to normalize disrespect. You weren't born to clap for mediocrity. You were built to move different, speak different, see different. And that threatens people who survive by pretending. Every moment they tried to shrink you was them trying to protect their illusion. You made them feel exposed, not by confrontation, but by contrast. You had the nerve to walk in with self-respect. You had the audacity to hold your head high without needing their permission. You didn't ask for a seat. You walked in like the table was already yours. They don't hate you because you're loud. They hate you because you're calm. You don't flinch. You don't beg. You don't play the game. You show up in your rawness and dare them to look away. And they can't. That's why they follow you in stores. That's why they whisper when you walk past. That's why they sabotage and study you at the same time. They hate that you're watched, yet still free. Visible but untouchable. You were never the villain. You were just the only one who couldn't be lied to. And let's talk facts. When the targeting is this consistent, when the patterns repeat themselves no matter where you go or how polite you are, it's not your imagination. It's a strategy. You were marked, not by accident but by your aura. They clocked it before you even had language for it. Before you could spell chosen, they were already trying to put you in a box labeled difficult, aggressive, too sensitive, not a team player. Translation? You wouldn't bow, you wouldn't pretend, and that made you dangerous. They wanted to shake your belief in yourself. They wanted to drown you in doubt, so you'd second-guess your brilliance. They wanted to break you before you fully stepped into the look that's now got the whole town whispering. Because let's be real, this glow-up wasn't cosmetic, it was cosmic. You didn't just change clothes, you changed frequency, you shed old skins, you buried parts of yourself you outgrew, you healed wounds that weren't even yours to carry. And now your very presence makes systems malfunction. They see it in your walk, in your tone, in the way your eyes no longer search for approval. You used to explain yourself. Now you just exist unapologetically. That's why it's going down. That's why they're talking. Not because you posted a selfie, but because you became the version of yourself they swore you never would. They told everyone you were dramatic. They told everyone you were the problem. They twisted your kindness into weakness and your strength into threat. But now they're being forced to sit in the truth. And they can't handle the reflection. You want the real reason it's happening now, because you finally stopped doubting your own clarity. You started trusting what your spirit always knew. That the places where you were disrespected were never aligned. That the people who turned cold on you weren't confused, they were calculating. And that the rejection wasn't punishment, it was redirection. You were never meant to blend in, you were born to disrupt. That's why every environment you enter either transforms or turns against you. You bring truth, and truth is loud, even when unspoken. That's why they tried to gaslight you into thinking you were crazy, because if you ever fully believed what you carried, it was game over for them. Well, guess what? It's game over now. This is why it's the talk of the town, not just because of how you look, but because they know what it took for you to still be standing. You walked through fire and came out shining like truth they can't unsee. And the same systems that tried to cancel you are now scrambling to catch up to the energy you naturally exude. You were the target because you were the threat. And now you're the storm. So let them whisper, let them speculate, let them choke on their own disbelief. You're not rising, you've risen. And it wasn't by accident, it was by force, silent, strategic, and now unstoppable. Number 2, you weren't just watched, you were prepped against before you even showed up. They didn't meet you and decide to hate you. They were told who you were before you ever had a chance to speak. Let that chill run down your spine. Because this wasn't random. It was coordinated. People you've never spoken to, somehow they already didn't like you. They gave you looks like you'd insulted them personally, treated you like an intruder, like you had already done something wrong. But what really happened? They were briefed, indoctrinated, primed to expect you as a problem. The moment your name was mentioned, the whispers began, not because of anything you said, but because of everything they were told you represent. Your energy arrived before your body did, and they couldn't handle it. So they built a wall of bias before you could even knock on the door. Ever walk into a room and feel the tension before a word is spoken? That's not paranoia, that's preparation. You didn't walk into a blank space, you walked into a setup. The neighbor who looked at you sideways the first day, the manager who seemed standoffish before learning your resume, that friend group that randomly iced you out before ever giving you a chance. That wasn't mood, that was intel. You were profiled by your presence. They weren't reacting to your actions. They were reacting to your potential, to your essence, to the threat you posed just by refusing to conform. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. Your authenticity exposes their performance. You walk in raw, real, and untamed, and that disrupts the entire fake frequency they built their identity on. They wear masks to survive. You walk in unmasked, and suddenly everyone feels seen, exposed, uneasy. That's why they had to prepare. You don't blend in, you wake people up, and that makes you dangerous. So no, it wasn't personal, but it was absolutely intentional. You were targeted not because of who you are to them, but because of what you are to the system. A risk, a mirror, a reminder of everything they had to kill in themselves to fit in. And you might be thinking, but why me? I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't do anything except exist boldly. You didn't code switch. You didn't water yourself down. You didn't become smaller so they could feel safe. And that alone, that was enough to trigger their silent alarms. Because the truth is, they always needed permission to be who you are naturally. And when they saw you walk in unbothered, unapologetic, and unshaken, it messed with their programming. So the only way to contain you was to warn others about you. Spread rumors, plant seeds, brief the gatekeepers, delay your rise. But here's what they didn't account for. Your glow doesn't need permission. And even when they try to label you, block you, or turn others against you, the real always rises. And now, you've risen so loud they can't drown you out. They tried to warn people about you. Now those same people are watching you shine and questioning the lies they were fed. So when they say it's going down, believe them, because the script is flipping. The ones who were warned about you, they're becoming your quiet supporters. The same system that tried to keep you invisible. It's being forced to watch you become unavoidable. They built a network to stop you, but you became the signal that disrupted the whole system. Number 3, they didn't just try to silence you, they tried to rewire your mind. They didn't need to kill your power, they just needed you to doubt it long enough to hand it over yourself. Let's talk about it. The real war wasn't waged outside of you. It was psychological, internal, subtle, strategic, because they knew they couldn't destroy you directly, so they made you question whether you were ever real to begin with. That's gaslighting, the slow, cold erosion of your truth. You said, "That felt off." They said, "You're overreacting." You said, "I felt that shift in the room." They said, "You're too sensitive." You said, "Something about them isn't right." They said, "You always think someone's out to get you." And over time, doubt creeps in. Not because you were wrong, but because you were surrounded by people whose survival depended on convincing you that you were. That gut feeling, that wasn't paranoia. That was precision. That was the internal radar of someone who's had to survive a world that smiles and schemes at the same time. You weren't imagining the shade. You weren't inventing the tension. You weren't being dramatic when you said, "Something's not sitting right." That was your spirit reading data faster than your brain could process. That was your instincts scanning the energy in the room and sounding the silent alarm. But instead of backing you, they turned it into a weapon against you, made you the emotional one, the problem, the unstable, when in reality, you were the only one who was awake. See, this was never about proving you wrong. It was about breaking your compass, because when a chosen one trusts their own instincts, it's over. You stop needing advice. You stop seeking validation. You stop obeying manipulation. And when that happens, you become untouchable. So what did they do? They lied. Subtly, persistently. They created an atmosphere where you were forced to apologize for breathing too deeply, where your ability to read the room became a burden instead of a superpower. They made you feel like your truth was a glitch, when really it was a gift. But here's the twist. It didn't work. Not forever. Because now, that very sensitivity they mocked, it's the weapon that makes you unshakable. That intensity they tried to shame you for, that's your inner fire. That's what's glowing right now. That's the look they're talking about. The look of someone who knows. They gaslit you because they couldn't dim you. And now, they're choking on the truth you never stopped feeling. Number 4. This wasn't a scuffle. It was a full-blown operation. And you were the mark. It doesn't take 300 people to ruin one life unless that life carries enough light to expose 300 shadows. Let that marinate. This wasn't petty drama. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a conspiracy, a network, a machine, a well-oiled system of silence, sabotage, and smiling snakes. Over 300 people, yes, 300, all orbiting the same sick mission. Contain you, discredit you, destroy you. And for what? Because you walked in with no mask. Because you dared to speak truth in rooms built on lies? Because your very look, that unshaken aura, that eyes-forward energy, reminded them of everything they gave up just to be accepted. This network didn't form overnight. It grew. Some joined out of fear, others out of jealousy, and the rest, the ones who smiled in your face, held your hand, pretended to love you, they did it out of pure wickedness. Law enforcement, pastors, human resources, managers, landlords, co-workers, friends, even your own family. They were all there, some pulling strings, some just nodding in silence, but all complicit, all accountable, all exposed. And maybe you asked yourself, why would so many people care about me? Simple answer. Because you were the one they couldn't buy, bend, or break. And that's dangerous to a world where power feeds off compliance. You moved different. You loved without manipulation. You told the truth without apology. You didn't need status to stand tall. And your ability to walk into a room and change the energy without saying a word. That alone threatened the entire architecture of their illusion. So they swarmed, quietly at first, whispering campaigns, closed-door meetings, weird coincidences that drained your money, your time, your sanity. Your name was passed around like a secret file. Some wanted to watch you fall, others wanted a front-row seat, and many just didn't want to be your next target if they stood by you. But guess what? You stood alone and still didn't fall. That's what makes them sick. That's what's fueling the gossip now. You were outnumbered, 300 to 1, and still didn't break. That's why it's going down now. That's why the look is getting louder. That's why justice is echoing through boardrooms, courthouses, and backrooms that thought they'd never be touched. Because the same network that plotted your collapse is collapsing in real time. And you're not the victim anymore. You're the reckoning. Number 5. They tried to drag you in the mud, but you walked through it without losing your crown. Grace isn't weakness, it's warfare, and you fought with silence louder than their screams. You could have snapped. You could have exposed them all, dropped names, lit matches, and watched their little kingdoms burn. But you didn't. Not because you couldn't, but because you chose not to become like them. That's what they never understood. You had every reason to retaliate, every receipt, every right, but you walked away instead. With your head high, your tone calm, and your soul clean. That's what's killing them now. You didn't feed the fire. You didn't clap back online. You didn't turn dirty when they went low. You didn't shrink yourself to make them feel tall. You handled betrayal like royalty, not with noise, but with presence. That slow, silent, devastating kind of grace that doesn't beg to be seen, but is felt so deeply that it leaves a bruise on the egos of those who tried to break you. Let's be honest, grace under fire is not for the weak. It's not passive, it's surgical. It's the choice to let karma speak louder than you ever could. And that decision, that's what turned the tables, because they wanted a show. They wanted to drag you into the circus. They wanted you to explode so they could label you crazy, angry, unstable. But you didn't. You just kept showing up, with poise, with consistency, with that unshakable aura that said, I see you, I know what you did, and I'm still not coming down to your level. And now they're choking on it. Because here's what grace does. It makes your enemies look foolish by simply existing. It exposes them without you lifting a single finger. It burns them slowly while you stay cool. They humiliated you, and you stayed composed. They betrayed you, and you didn't beg. They slandered you, and you just elevated. That's why the town can't stop talking. That's why it's going down now. Your look? It's not just about style or glow. It's about that quiet strength, that soft dominance, that regal composure that says, you threw dirt, but I turned it into ground to rise on. And no, they'll never admit it, but you crushed them with dignity. And now the whole world's watching the one they tried to bury walk like royalty. Number 6, they burned sage in public but spit poison in private. That's not wisdom, that's witchy gossip disguised as concern. The same mouths that called you too much are the ones that secretly wanted your spark for themselves. Let's talk about community gossip, that stale, bitter perfume of fake concern mixed with envy and projection. The kind that always starts with, I'm just saying, and ends with your name getting dragged through rooms you've never even stepped in. The truth is, you didn't trigger them with your flaws. You triggered them with your flame, your ambition, your aura, your presence. You weren't even doing much, just existing, glowing a little too loud, walking with too much purpose, smiling like you still believed in something, and that made them furious. Because here's what they'll never say out loud. They gave up on themselves a long time ago. Dreams deferred, confidence crushed, vision gone dry. So when you showed up, fresh fire in your chest, purpose in your eyes, refusal to fold, they saw a mirror, and they hated what stared back. That's why the gossip started. That's why they baited you. That's why they said your name with that slick little smirk, not because you were wrong, but because you still had hope, still had style, still had that I know who I am look that doesn't flinch when cornered. And nothing bothers a lifeless crowd more than someone who refuses to dim just to make others feel comfortable. They whispered behind curtains, over dinner tables, in side group chats like spiritual saboteurs dressed in church clothes and community ties. But what they really wanted was to curse you into silence, to make you question yourself, to bait you into a scene so they could call you unstable, when really it was their insecurities screaming the loudest. You saw it though. You saw how they moved. You caught the fake compliments. You noticed the switch when you walked in the room. And still, you stayed quiet. You stayed above. You stayed focused. Because you knew their tactics were old, their power was fake, and their whispers, just the sound of dreams that never made it past fear. Let them cast their gossip spells. Let them form their little spiritual alliances of envy and confusion. But know this, your energy can't be touched by mouths that don't even speak truth to themselves. You didn't just survive their noise, you outclassed it. And that, chosen one, is exactly why your name is now the one on everyone's tongue. Not from scandal, but from undeniable elevation. Number 7, they wanted you to break at work, but you turned that corporate cage into a throne room. They thought stealing your check would bankrupt your spirit, but they forgot you came with wealth they could never touch. Let's rip the mask off this one. Workplace warfare isn't just real, it's tactical. They didn't just mistreat you, they orchestrated it. The petty schedule changes, the missing hours, the fake confusion about your performance, the way they'd assign you impossible tasks, then punish you for falling behind. That wasn't bad management, that was sabotage, and they did it together. Let's call it what it was, a slow-motion assassination of your character and confidence. They wanted to corner you, to make you snap, to catch you in a moment of frustration so they could twist it and say, "See, this is why we don't promote them. This is why we can't trust them with leadership." Meanwhile, they were watching every move you made, not because you were a problem, but because you were outperforming without even trying. You brought ideas, vision, ethics, fire, the kind of presence that made mediocrity feel threatened. And that, right there, that's what got you targeted. They didn't want the job done right. They wanted their ego protected. So they rewrote your schedule behind your back. They buried your wins. They lost your paycheck like your rent and dignity weren't on the line. And when you asked questions, they acted like you were the issue. But you didn't give them the reaction they wanted. You stayed in control. You documented. You collected receipts. You showed up early. You left with class. You never let their chaos infect your character. Because deep down, you knew karma has a clipboard too. And that place, that cold, rigid system where they tried to strip you of your worth, it's now feeling your absence like a power outage. The energy shifted the day you left. Project stalled. Morale dropped. People started whispering, you know, they were never the problem. Now your name is echoing through those same halls, not with shame, but with respect they were too blind to give you when you were there. The same supervisors who disrespected you are watching your glow up from the sidelines, hoping their sabotage doesn't get brought to light when the tower falls. Because it's falling, chosen one, not just the job. The system. You were never just an employee. You were the storm in the building, and they knew it the day you walked in. Number 8. They built a war around your name without ever having the courage to say it to your face. It takes a weak kingdom to fear someone they've never met, but it takes a master manipulator to make that kingdom turn against them anyway. Let's expose it. The smear campaign wasn't just one person gossiping out of spite. This was psychological warfare on a community level, a coordinated attack on your image, your essence, your energy, not through truth, not through experience, but through carefully planted poison that spread like wildfire through weak minds and bitter hearts. They created hate for someone people never even met. Let that sink in. You became a threat without ever speaking, a villain in stories you were never present for. They twisted your silence into arrogance, your strength into danger, your boundaries into rudeness. And the people around them, they didn't need proof, just the right tone, just a little hint of drama, a smirk, a fabricated concern. That's all it took to turn entire rooms against someone they'd never even shared eye contact with. Because the puppet master didn't need facts, they used psychology, gaslighting to make others question your intentions, projection to dump their demons onto your name, triangulation to play people against each other while you stood there, painted as the storm, when all you were doing was breathing. You ever walk into a room and feel the energy tighten around you like a noose? People avoiding eye contact, fake laughter when you speak, a sudden coldness from people who used to smile. That wasn't intuition playing games. That was your spirit reading a room that had already been briefed against you. And the worst part? You couldn't prove it. No text threads, no voice recordings, just energy, just that feeling in your gut that said, they've already decided who I am. But here's what they underestimated. You didn't need proof because you had discernment. You saw the patterns, you felt the shift, you started moving different, not out of paranoia, but out of precision. You stopped explaining yourself, you stopped overgiving, you stopped softening your truth just to fit into rooms built on lies. And that decision, that's what shifted the war. Because now all those people who were manipulated into hating you, they're seeing the truth for themselves. The lies aren't aging well. The mask is slipping. The one who pulled the strings is being exposed. Slowly, publicly, and without mercy. And you stayed silent. You stayed focused. You became the myth that outlived the rumor. And now they're realizing the one they were told to hate was the one they needed to follow all along. Number 9. This wasn't just hate. This was a murder attempt disguised as misfortune. When envy can't kill your character, it tries to kill your body, but fate has a funny way of guarding what can't be replaced. Let's not sugarcoat this. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't jealousy. This was a full-blown, calculated attempt to erase you, physically, quietly, without fingerprints. They didn't want you just gone from the room. They wanted you gone from this earth. The attacks escalated. The hostility grew darker, and the setups became deadly. They left security doors unlocked on purpose. They created electrical fire risks in your space. They tampered with your locks. They watched your routines and mapped your movements like predators stalking prey. And if you had been just 1 second slower, 1 moment less aware, you wouldn't be reading this right now. But something kicked in. That sharp flash in your gut. That still voice in your chest. That sudden urge to check the door twice. Take a different route. Stay home that night. That wasn't fear. That was your intuition doing what alarms can't, saving your life. They made it look like carelessness, like coincidence. But there are no coincidences when your death benefits their agenda. The truth? You were becoming too powerful, too visible, too connected, too untouchable. And when lies didn't work, when character assassination failed, they got desperate. They thought, maybe if something tragic happens, the story ends and no one will ask questions. But they forgot one thing. You were born with spiritual surveillance. You sensed the shift in the air. You noticed when people's eyes stopped blinking around you. You picked up on the traps before they were finished building them. And when they got sloppy, left fingerprints in the energy, left the door cracked just enough, gave you one too many accidental near misses, you didn't panic. You observed. You adapted. You survived. And now you're not just alive, you're alert. They failed. And not only did they fail, they exposed themselves. Because when you survive a setup that extreme, you stop being afraid of shadows. You walk with proof. You walk with power. And that look on your face now, that's not just strength. It's survival glowing like truth they can't bury. You weren't supposed to make it, But you did, and now they're the ones watching their world unravel, while you walk away with silence on your lips and fire in your steps. Number 10. They tried to lock you up, but the universe unlocked them. The trap didn't fail, it reversed, and the ones who built it got caught in their own blueprint. When murder didn't silence you, they pivoted. They tried to frame you. They stripped your rights. They took your protection. They smeared your name in places they thought you'd never recover from. They wanted the narrative to end with a mugshot, not a microphone. Their plan was surgical: fabricate the threat, plant the evidence, trigger the arrest, and watch the headlines eat you alive. And for a second, it almost worked. They got bold, confident. They thought you were surrounded. Cops showed up. Warrants were drawn. You were disarmed, isolated, stripped of your truth in real time. The kind of silence that wraps around a setup like a funeral sheet. They were ready to bury you, legally, emotionally, spiritually. But then something happened. A single miscommunication on the radio, one missed signal, one delayed message, one officer who hesitated, one paper that didn't match the timestamp, and just like that, their perfect trap fell apart at the seams. That wasn't luck. That wasn't timing. That was the universe stepping in through a glitch. Because when you're chosen, you don't need to swing a sword. The battlefield folds on your behalf, and in that moment, everything they'd hidden started rising. The lies started leaking. Pictures emerged. Call logs surfaced. Emails, timestamps, deleted files, all reappeared like ghosts of their own destruction. Paper trails that wouldn't burn. Witnesses who couldn't be bought. Receipts they forgot existed. And suddenly, the script flipped. You weren't the villain. You were the evidence of survival, of truth, of justice knocking like thunder. Investigators started digging, and what they found shattered everything. Judges involved, cops in on the setup, employers leaking data, community leaders playing both sides. And those 300 names, they weren't just enemies, they were co-conspirators, now facing charges. And while your name was being cleared in legal documents, your spirit was being cleared in the court of the cosmos. What they wished on you, poverty, isolation, illness, came back to them tenfold. Their businesses folded, their marriages collapsed, their health deteriorated. One by one, their masks fell off, and behind each one, a coward who thought the universe wasn't watching. But you stood, you breathed, you watched, and most importantly, you stayed intact. Because your vindication wasn't just a legal win, it was karmic combustion. The loud silence of the universe saying, this one was protected, and now the world will see why. You didn't just survive the setup, you outlived the system. Number 11. They watched you walk through fire, and now they're stepping into the flame with you. Real power doesn't fall in love with your comfort. It falls in love with your capacity to lead through chaos and still come out with compassion in your eyes. Let's get this straight. You were never invisible. Even in your darkest hour, even when it felt like the whole world was turned against you, there was someone watching, someone in silence, someone powerful, not a savior, but an observer, not there to rescue you, but to respect you. And now, they're stepping forward. This isn't sympathy, this isn't pity, this is recognition of your poise under pressure, of your wisdom when silence was your only weapon, of the way you held onto your light when the entire community tried to dim you. They admired your silence more than others admire noise. And now, the one who never needed to be loud is finally ready to speak, to align, to build, to open doors that no enemy can ever shut again. This isn't some trauma bond. This is alignment on another frequency, a bond born of strength, respect, and resonance. They see your scars, but they also see your strategy. Your softness never made you weak. It made you unforgettable. You were loyal when it cost you everything, kind when it would have been easier to be cold. And that's what drew them in. And now, the tide has turned. Business opportunities are flowing in. Leaders who once doubted you are now circling back with respect. Your name, once dragged through backrooms and inboxes, is now floating in boardrooms, partnerships, and rooms you used to only dream about. Not because you're lucky, not because someone put you on, but because you stayed faithful in the dark. You didn't sell out. You didn't shrink. You didn't betray your inner truth to survive. You became the standard. And now that inner child inside you, the one who used to wonder if anyone would ever really see her, the one who felt unsafe, unprotected, unloved. She's not just being held, she's being honored. You are safe now, you are seen now, you are valued now, and you are no longer surviving this journey. You are thriving, publicly, loudly, unapologetically. The world finally caught up, and the one who watched you fight in silence, they're no longer in the shadows. They're here to build, to protect, and to rise with you. Number 12. The universe didn't just save you, it used you as the hammer to reshape the entire system. You weren't sent here to survive the storm, you were sent to end it, and now the thunder carries your name. This was never just about you. That's what they never understood. When they came for your light, they weren't attacking a person. They were poking at a fault line, a pressure point in the universe itself. And you were the pressure that pushed back. Hard, loud, relentless. They thought they were silencing one person. They ended up triggering a cosmic correction. You were the rebalancing force, the correction to centuries of silence, of playing small, of enduring abuse behind fake smiles and stitched-together reputations. What they tried to bury became the very seed that cracked open every lie they built their lives around. Because your story, it exposed the system. It activated truth. It lit a fire under every false structure pretending to be untouchable. And now, everything they built on fear, envy, and manipulation is crumbling. Quietly, publicly, brick by brick. This was bigger than gossip, bigger than betrayal, bigger than the warfare that followed you from community to classroom to corporate office. This was a spiritual domino effect, a shift in power, and you were the force that flipped the first piece. They tried to destroy you, and instead you became a walking mirror that forced the world to look at its own rot. The radio miscommunication. That wasn't a mistake. That was a signal. The failed frame job. That was the reversal. The gossip that backfired. That was the prophecy unraveling in real time. Because the universe doesn't play favorites, it plays fair, and what you endured was never for nothing. It was precise, painful, perfectly timed. Now the very same people who tried to exile you are choking on the words they used to destroy you. The town that used to whisper your name with disgust, now they say it with awe, with caution, with respect, because what was once too much, too intense, too different is now the blueprint. You've gone from whispered threats to visible power, from exclusion to exaltation, from watch your back to watch her rise. And your look, that unshaken posture, that storm in your eyes energy they once feared. Now it walks into rooms and silences every lie that was ever told about you. You didn't just glow up, you glowed through the darkness they threw at you. You didn't just heal, you turned your healing into a weapon. You didn't just survive, you led a spiritual revolt. And now your story is legacy. Your name is stamped into every institution that once tried to erase it. Your presence is shifting atmospheres. Your leadership is redefining what power looks like. Because let's be honest, this wasn't just transformation. This was resurrection. You were spiritually declared dead, counted out, framed, laughed at, gossiped about. But here you are, alive, glowing, grounded, and more dangerous than ever. Not because you're vengeful, but because you're focused. Not because you want power, but because you embody it. You didn't trade your soul to win, you refined it in the fire. That's why they can't stop watching. Not out of curiosity, but because deep down, they know. The system that raised them is bowing to the force that raised you. So, understand this. The conspiracy is old news. The setup is a footnote. Now the only thing people want to know is, how did you make it? How did you stay standing? How did you turn humiliation into honor, pain into purpose, survival into empire? And here's the secret they'll never print on paper. You were faithful in the dark. You trusted the whispers of your intuition when the world gaslit your senses. You stayed graceful when they tried to turn you savage. You didn't just rise, you rose correctly. And now the universe is balancing the scales on your behalf. Businesses are failing, the ones built on your stolen energy. Families are splitting, the ones that cast you out. Reputations are burning, the same ones that stood on lies. And you're walking through the fire they built for you, wearing it like a crown. This isn't revenge. This is realignment, a cosmic correction, and the one they tried to destroy is now the one the whole town can't stop watching. Because your presence can't be ignored, and your rise is unstoppable. And now, as the smoke clears and the masks fall, one truth remains. You were never the problem. You were the shift. The conspiracy failed, but you didn't. You didn't just survive the fire. You became the reason it can't burn the same way again. This is your season, your legacy, your correction of the chaos. If this hit your spirit like truth finally coming home, drop 777 in the comments. Press like, subscribe, and share this with another soul who needs to remember who they are. Because your rise isn't just personal, it's the message they can't ignore.